This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to the Captain Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
The Hometown Foundation is excited to bring back the Dream Ride experience, August 26th to the 28th at Connecticut's Farmington Polo Club. Join us in celebrating the accomplishments of our Dream Riders while enjoying live music, a car and motorcycle show, family fun zone, pet adoptions, canine demonstrations, the Fireman's Chili Cook-Off, and much, much more. Get your tickets today.
You're listening to the Captain Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Yarg! And I just wanted y'all to know that just because I'm not dressed in silver and black doesn't mean that I can't always be the captain. Because I'm the captain. That goes without saying. And in fact, I got a phone call right now
from NFL Lonnie Young.
And I was just doing my intro. And Lonnie, I don't know if you got your volume on, sir, but I was just letting folks know that I am looking my best. I went and had my hair did. Trust me, I haven't looked this good since I think either senior prom or something like that. And you probably no, Vernus we went to different high schools, but by that time, enough of that. I want to say thank you to all for being here. And it's my great pleasure to always have on fantastic guests, because not everybody had the luck and I say this facetiously, but I also say it for true. Not everybody had the luck to play with the Raiders, but if somebody would have been a great Raider, it is my guess that I'm going to pretty much turn the show over to. And Lonnie, like I said, I don't know if you can see the production, but I am wearing Cardinal red just for you, sir. And I did my hair, like I said. Check one, check one. Are you here, sir?
I'm here. Can you hear me at all?
Yes, sir, I can. I want to make sure. I'm going to put the max on the speakers, and because I don't want to get reverb. So hopefully it won't be reverb, because if I turn it up, sometimes I get reverb, and I don't want that. But again,
I want to apologize to you again for the technical difficulties.
Right, and I wanted to let folks know, as y'all know, normally we have our guests. Oh, they said you can barely hear you. Okay, gosh darn it. We're going to do a sound check again. Normally we have our guests here in studio, or actually with a video, but unfortunately, technical difficulties this time has prevented Mr. Young from joining us virtually, and that's why he can't see how pretty I look. So
I can see you on camera.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. And I want to can everybody hear Mr. Lonnie Young? Tito's old, because he says he can barely hear you, but Tito's older than me, and he probably needs to plug in his hearing aid. So that's probably good for Tito. But without there you go. He said that's better. Without further ado, I give you Mr. Lonnie Young, safety of the Cardinals, and I would say not Arizona. They were already, they were in Arizona. They had left St. Louis. So the Arizona Cardinals, the New York Jets, the AFC champion San Diego Chargers, and we'll talk about that as well, and then went back to New York to finish his career. And what is awesome is that he was a scout to work alongside Hall of Famer Ozzie Newsome with the Ravens. And we will have Mr. Young on again, because I want to see that ring. But without further ado, this is Mr. Lonnie Young. Everybody, welcome Mr. Young here to the show. You're in, sir.
Well, thank you so much. I was really looking forward to coming on today. Again, my apologies for the technical difficulties. But by the way, you look great, and I think that Cardinal red looks good on you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I will say this: if I don't wear silver and black, my next favorite color is purple, and I go by saying that and I wear hot pink really well too. Which is I don't want to hear about that, but I wear hot pink very well. But I think I look good in red. They say that I look more svelte in red, so I should wear it more often. There might be a delay.
Yeah, it's a little bit of delay, but I want to tell you this, that the Cardinal red, I'm sure that pink looks good on you, but I find myself, as I age and put on weight, I find that black looks better on me more and more.
Well, then, sir, I will be more than happy to have you come out to a Raider event, because I know you're in Phoenix, and there's plenty of Raider Nation in Phoenix. In fact, Kenny Stabler's daughter, Kendra, lives in Phoenix. So the last time I was there for the Cardinals-Raiders game 4 years ago, because the Cardinals are coming to play the Raiders. In fact, are you coming to Vegas for our season opener by any chance?
I hadn't planned on it at this point, but I will tell you this, that the steak was a great one. Kenny Stabler, he was awesome.
Yes, sir.
I used to love the Raiders. I love that secondary for the Raiders with Skip Thomas, George Atkinson. He's one of the reasons why I wore number 43.
Nice.
Jack Tatum from Ohio State. They were great. Willie Brown, there's an awesome secondary.
Well, I was going to say, now I was reading some of your bio. I know you went to Michigan State, but it says that I saw where you're from. You're a Flintstone from what it looks like.
I am a Flintstone. I carry that badge of honor very proudly.
Yes. And Ed Winchell, yes, this is Lonnie Young out of Michigan State. So Ed Winchell knows who you are. And Ed is one of the older crew here that I'm young compared to Ed Winchell. Kind of like Tito and Ed are like the older guard in here. So they go back to the Raiders from way back. So yeah, he's like, is this the Lonnie R. Young out of Michigan State? And yes, it is. And so I saw the 43. So you wore that because of George, huh?
Yeah, I just thought that whole secondary was very aggressive, ball hawk, and I like the whole Raiders mystique, everything about it. And, it's funny because when you would come in to play the Raiders, they play that Raider music, and little do they know that music got all of us fired up to play against them. It's just such a great mystique that the Raiders have. For
sure. And we obviously we get into it, and the crowd in Las Vegas is. It's not what it was in Oakland. It's not what it was in LA, but we are trying to get the folks that are from Oakland and from LA. They know what time it is when we play in Vegas, but the newer fans, we are trying to teach the newer fans the proper ways to be a Raider fan at the stadium. And I will say this, and I don't know if you're aware of this, Lonnie, but when you're in Oakland, you stand the entire game. And that's just the way, Raider Nation is. And in Vegas, the one and only Violator, who's a very good friend of mine, he was asked to sit down by people behind him. So when you ask Violator to sit down, you know that there's something wrong. Because how dare you ask Violator anything other than a picture, but you're telling Violator, sir, you need to sit down. No, it don't work like that.
Some people have to learn the hard way.
That's right. So again, and Ed Winchell even knows that you were number 36 at Michigan State.
Yeah, but good old 36. It was not one of my favorite numbers, but I tried to make the most of it.
Well, let's go there while we're there. Tell us about playing in that conference. And by the way, I just had on a fellow, I don't want to say, is it correctly, a Michiganer? It's kind of like I'm a Floridian. I'm not a Floridian. I'm a Floridian. But I had a fellow Michiganer on Tuesday out of Saginaw. That was Stuart Schweigert. So I get a chance to have two folks from Michigan, two folks from the Big Ten. Well, at least it was the Big Ten back when you guys were there.
Yeah.
And, so two Midwestern hard-hitting safeties. So maybe next time we get you on, I'll be in the middle, and I can be on, and you can be on one side, and Stuart can be on the other side, and you guys can just, play that, safety game of, harder hitting things. Because we're gonna start from there. When you were in that conference, and you played, I think that Archie Griffin was well gone by then, but you played the hard hitting Ohio State. You played the Boilermakers. Obviously, you played Michigan, and that was your biggest rival. What was your remembrances of being in the Big Ten back then, and like some of your more memorable experiences in games?
I loved playing in the Big Ten, and I've got a couple different stories. When my first start was against Tony Easton in Champaign, Illinois, and this was my first start. And for some reason, I was abnormally nervous, and I had a pretty good high school career, and I figured I'd get to Michigan State, play the big man on campus role. And then when I finally got my first start, it was the most miserable football experience I ever had. they must have threw for 300 yards on me alone. Sherman Lewis, who was our defensive coordinator at the time, he took me out of the game for a while, told me, settle down, you can play with these guys. And he said, I'm going to put you back in, so just watch the game for a little while. Then I went back in, and next play, Tony Eaton saw 36 out there. He checked something else, and they threw the doggone ball deep again. But I'll tell you this, I grew so much from that experience. They had 3 senior receivers, and I learned right away that I had a long way to go. And after that game, we got back in front of the football building at Michigan State. I sat on the curb, and I cried like a baby, and I swore that would never happen to me again. But it changed my entire outlook on playing in the Big Ten and my work ethic. And I took it out on my teammates from that point on.
Well, there you go. Now, I was going to say, so who were your teammates back in Michigan State at the time?
Well, I grew up in Flint, Michigan with Carl Banks. We grew up a few houses from one another. We've been playing football together since we were, 9 years of age. He's a year older than me. We had another guy named Brent Williams who went to Toledo. He played another 10 years. All 3 of us were on the same Pop Warner team.
Wow.
Which is rare. Those guys were really big. I kind of grew big late, but we had a really good coach that gave us some of the good fundamentals early on. There's a lot of talent in Flint coming out. Daryl Turner, who was a good receiver for Seattle, he ran into some issues early in his career. We had a lot of great basketball players come out of Flint. We had a running back, Booker Moore, that went to Penn State, played for Joe Paterno. A lot of talent. We always used to say in Flint that if you go off to one of the summer football camps at one of the colleges, by the time you come home, you'll be behind. Some of the best talent was in the neighborhood.
Wow. And like I said, and Stewart said things like that as well. Playing in Saginaw, and him and Charles Rogers were like, one was east of in the county, one was west. And Stewart was telling me about how Charles had an accident, and he took it upon himself to go to the hospital because Charles and him were competitors within that realm, and all the way from high school. And it was such a thing about, like you said, your peers were I mean, when you have peers that are so athletic and that you pace yourselves with, and again, and the fact you said you go to camp and you're behind, that means a lot. That you're not, even though you're a camp, your peers and you're missing out from just being around your peers. That says a lot.
It was unbelievable. We had guys, Andre Rison, Mark Ingram Sr., whose dad is he's the father of Heisman Trophy winner, Mark Ingram Jr., who went to Alabama, Courtney Hawkins, who was a second-round pick to Tampa Bay. I mean, these guys just grew up in the neighborhood. And it was just an amazing time in Flint, Michigan. Jim Morrissey was a linebacker out of Michigan State. It was from Flint Powers. He was on the 85 Bears roster as a linebacker, playing along with, the great linebackers that they had, Wilbur Marshall and all those guys. And these guys we all grew up together and competed against each other since we were kids.
Well, I have my own Wilbur Marshall story. It was when I went to Florida, I had an inkling for about I was kind of full of vim and vigor, and I'm going to Florida, and I'm up there like a week early for ROTC indoctrination. They wanted us in there earlier, so I had a ROTC scholarship, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go and I'm going to walk on and go up to the football team and walk on. And I was going up Fraternity Row at the time, and walking down Fraternity Row was Wilbur Marshall. And he was obviously an All-American. He was a senior, and I was obviously a freshman. But seeing Wilbur Marshall up close and personal, I said, you know, that ROTC scholarship I got is pretty nice. And I don't have to worry about getting broken in half. So like I said, for about 5 minutes, I had delusions of grandeur that I was going to be kind of like Rudy, you know, like the scene in Rudy where you're going to go in there and you're going to make the team and, you know, everything's going to be like 5 minutes, seeing Wilbur Marshall walking down fraternity row, me walking up fraternity row. And I said, yeah, I will keep my ROTC scholarship and I will keep my bones and my teeth and I will be in the best of health and the Navy will take care of me. So I decided at that time. So, I mean, obviously there's a big difference from when you're playing high school ball to finally going into playing for a real program. And again, Big Ten with all of the coaches back then. And obviously, let's see, back then, was Woody Hayes still at Ohio State back then?
Woody Hayes was gone. Bo Schembechler was just finishing up. He recruited me at Michigan.
I definitely want to. I definitely want to hear about that. But go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, Bo Schembechler, he was at my mom's house, and he actually got mad at me when he asked me what schools I was considering. And when I told him Michigan State, he almost lost it. He was like, well, you don't want to play any big-time football. How could you even consider a school like that? He really just about lost it. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me because when I got to Michigan State, I had Ty Wellingham as a position coach for a year, and then I had Nick Saban as position coach for the rest of my tenure at Michigan State. He was phenomenal as a coach, a position coach, very detailed. He would have a complete fit over the smallest false step, any little thing. He was fantastic.
Wow! In fact, that actually sounds familiar. We've had the pleasure of having Jerry Robinson on, and Jerry was telling me about the time that he was recruited out in California, and John McKay was down at USC at the time. And John McKay was going over and looking for him to recruit, and Jerry had an unfortunate event occur where his brother was shot and was killed, and so he had to spend some time, taking care of the things like that. And John McKay made an offhand comment about something similar to what you were saying about, well, obviously you don't care enough, yada, 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 and whatnot. And Jerry took it upon himself. It's like, F you, John, I'm going to UCLA and you're going to see me every year. And Jerry was telling me at that senior year, when he went and got a chance to and they were beating USC at the time. At the time or maybe it was his senior year because McKay might have gone to the Bucks by then. But anyway, he had a chance to see John McKay across the sidelines from him when UCLA whooped that butt. And and basically just kind of gave him the old, with the eyes that told you so, like, yeah, buddy, I got the better of you. So, and the fact that you played for played with Ty Willingham, the great coach that he is, Nick Saban, otherwise known. Well, see, I'm a Gator, so that's otherwise known as Nick Satan, but that goes beyond compare. But that's just what we call him down here in the South. But the fact that you played for those two great coaches and to take that experience with you, you already were ahead of the game. Before you even hit the pros, being that you played at Michigan State, played with great people. And I'd love to hear about, like I said, Andre Rison being the fact that we're Raiders. And he played for the Chiefs for a little while, but we loved him when he was with the Raiders, obviously. So having played for him as well. But go ahead, sir.
I really felt like that I was very fortunate. It started early for me. My mom tells me a story about that when she was pregnant with me, She went to our high school alma mater football game, her and my dad, and she rubbed her stomach and said that I was going to be the football player of the family. I don't ever remember wanting to do anything other than that, was to play that game. I actually left the game of football. I told my own sons that if you don't love football, play basketball, because you have to love it, because it takes all of your being, every fiber of who you are, to compete at the highest level with a certain amount of consistency. I was very fortunate because I had Ty Willingham, Nick Saban. When I was with the Jets, Pete Carroll was my secondary coach and defensive coordinator. I really liked Gene Stallings as a coach when he came over to the Cardinals from the Dallas Cowboys after working under the great Tom Landry. And then I was fortunate enough to work alongside Ozzie, Newsome, a man that I have a great deal of respect for. These people played a really, really significant role in my development, which carried me after the game. Had a really good experience at Michigan State and coming out, where Magic had a real big influence on me, and I just love what he's done with his career prior to playing the game.
Wow. You were definitely at the well, granted, you were there before the Flintstones right, but the fact that you were there when Magic was there. You said you played.
He was a little ahead of me. He
Uh-huh.
was a little ahead of me, but we had a guy by the name of Dr. Tucker that did a lot of work for myself, Carl Baines, Andre Rison, and Magic. He had a lot of basketball guys, Doc Rivers, Isaiah Thomas. All those guys I was around as a young guy, and they had a lot of influence on me. Their work ethic, they shot free throws forever, they competed at everything, and it just became a way of life for us, and that's what I grew up seeing.
Okay, now and you kind of alluded to it. You obviously wanted to play football, but I'm sure that you played other sports before you hit Michigan State. So, I mean, you were motivated to play football, but let's just say, God forbid that something happened. Were you going to be using maybe basketball as a fallback or anything along those lines, or tell us what? I mean, you're going to play in the pros, but God forbid you don't get there. What was your fallback opportunities? What you thought you could do?
That's a really good question. I come from a track family, and I think a lot of people thought I might be going to Michigan State on this track scholarship. Once I did letter in football and track at Michigan State, I was a little bit of a late bloomer in basketball. But when you grow up in Michigan, during those winter months, all there is to do is play basketball in the gym or somewhere. So that's all we did. So everybody was hoopers, at least so they thought they were. And we have so many great, talented basketball players that come out of Flint, Michigan, the Trent Tuckers of the world, and the McKean Cleves, and Glenn Rice. The run he had during the tournament with University of Michigan was unbelievable. And all those Flintstones at Michigan State. It was just a really good time and a great experience. But I didn't really focus on track because at the time I didn't think you could make any real money running track. So I started really working for myself when I was a high school student. Those football games I was playing in high school, that was like a job. Because if I don't get a scholarship, I never go to college. So I couldn't miss a tackle. Because I needed to get a scholarship, or I would never would have went to school.
Okay, you were saying that obviously Bo went to recruit you. Anybody else that went to? Because I want to hear about Lonnie Young before he hits Michigan State. You know, you were going to go. You were just hell bent to go to Michigan State, or what were the other options?
Well, I really wasn't hell bent over going to Michigan State. Just that when I went, I had a really good experience. Part of that was because Carl, who I grew up with, was already there as a freshman, him and Daryl Turner, who I thought was one of the best athletes I ever seen. And so I was recruited. It really kind of came down to the same schools for me and Carl. But the fact that Carl Banks, another guy named Thad McFadden, went to the University of Wisconsin and then played for the Birmingham Stallions in the USFL years ago, those guys were a year ahead of me. So they were already bringing in college, people. They were being recruited by just about everybody across the country. So that helped me get initial exposure. And it came down to Michigan, Michigan State, Oklahoma, and USC. I had a couple of good lady friends that were playing basketball with Cheryl Miller at USC that went on to win a national championship, and that was Pam and Paula McGee, and Pam's son, JaVale, playing with the Phoenix Suns now.
Okay. And that's McGee that used to play for the Warriors and then the Lakers, right?
Yeah. Yep. JaVale McGee, his mom is Pam McGee.
Okay. Well, good lineage. I mean, yeah. I mean, you get a lot from your family and that. So I got to ask, what was your mom and dad, or where did you get the fire to be the athlete that you wanted to be, sir?
That's another great question. When I was a kid growing up, my dad apparently was a good football player and maybe an even better track man. I have an uncle by the name of Roy Young, and it's funny because I see my name as Lonnie Young all the time. I don't know where the R came from. I don't have a middle name. It's just Lonnie Young, but I had an uncle by the name of Roy Young who ran like a 9,400, 20.9, 200 meters, back in the early to mid 70s. And so I like to think that my athleticism came from my father's side, but I got my height from my mom's dad, my grandfather. My mom's grandfather, who I don't remember because he passed when I was a young kid, he was almost 7 foot. And so the year from the 8th grade to the 9th grade, I went from just a short guy to 6'2". Overnight.
I would say, Jared, I got some comments here. Jared, don't call in tonight because our guest is using the studio line. So no calls tonight. Anybody that wants to have any questions for Mr. Young, you're going to have to do it via comments because the studio line is being used by Mr. Young. So apologies there. But if you have any questions for Mr. Young, please be sure to hit him up on the comments, and I will make sure that he gets them. Again, for those that are wondering why there's this big ugly guy with a beautiful red shirt on tonight, is we are joined by Mr. Lonnie Young. Again, Cardinal, Jet, Charger, and we'll talk about that. You kind of break us on that there. Yeah, but you make up for it. You make up for it by being here, and the Ravens we'll definitely talk about again. Just making sure everybody knows we're on with Mr. Lonnie Young. So unfortunately, no calls in. If you have any questions, please hit us up in the chat line. If you are on Facebook, please head on over to YouTube. If you are on Twitter, I can't see a word of you being on Twitter. So please, everybody, come over to YouTube right now. We are joined by Lonnie Young. I'm sorry, sir. I had to make some announcement there as well. But again, great stories about the track and football. So I'm gonna ask, and I know that you might get this a lot. When you were drafted, and I had to look as well, I didn't realize that Jay Novacek was drafted by the Cardinals, because everybody always hears about his career with the Cowboys. I remember your first round pick. Now, if I'm not mistaken, he was a linebacker, correct?
That is correct, Freddie Joe Nunn.
Yep, because I remember that was the big, we got Freddie Joe Nunn. And I saw Jay Novacek was drafted by the Cardinals. But obviously the big question is, you were drafted in the 12th round, which is awesome because you were drafted. But I have to also ask at this, and again, I hate for it to sound like a left-handed compliment because the fact is you were drafted, and that was fantastic. But what I'm asking is, at that point, were you kind of wondering that, well, if I don't get drafted, I can sign with anybody? What were you at that point in your mind? What was going through your mind at that time?
You're good at what you do. You ask some great questions. I had a lot going on in my mind. It was funny. I can laugh now because it's behind me.
Yes, sir.
But Carl, one of my best friends, and at the time my best friend, he's a year ahead of me. Carl Davis was the third pick in the draft, in the '84 draft. Bill Turner went in the second round. The year I got drafted, the guy that played behind me for 3 years got picked in the 6th or 7th round, a guy by the name of Terry Lewis.
Okay.
And so it was the longest day of my life. I was sitting in the dorm room, and I got some information because where I was drafted by the Donald Trump's team, New Jersey Generals. I decided that I was going to wait and try to live my dream as an NFL player instead of going to USFL. And the day just went on, and people were calling my room. And where'd you go? I hadn't been picked. I got up and left and walked the campus a little bit, came back and hoping maybe somebody called. They never called. About 3 a.m, I got a knock on the door from a Dallas Cowboys scout who simply said, "Well, you didn't get drafted. You want to sign with the Cowboys." So I called my agent at the time, and I asked him, I said, maybe we can see if we can get a couple of dollars more. He offered me $10,000. He had it laid across the bed. And so he said, well, I've got a call back into Dallas. And he called me Bill Brandt. And Bill Brandt said, are you talking Lonnie Young from Michigan State? What are you doing with him? He got drafted. He got off the phone. He said, well, I got some good news. You was drafted in the 12th round by the Cardinals. I jumped for joy like I was the first pick in the draft. It was the most exciting moment of my existence at the time. I got a chance. I got a destination to go to. I went to the local sports store and bought a Cardinal baseball hat because I wouldn't have, I didn't get no hat or nothing.
Yeah, I mean, old school. It's like what Dick's Sporting Goods or whatever. It's like I want a Cardinals hat. I want a T-shirt. I want whatever you have, so I can show my bling bling to all the people say strutting around, and I could just picture like, yeah, I'm a Cardinal baby, yo, and it's rolling around like that. I mean, hey, I would be too. And go ahead.
I have a friend that works in the Buffalo Bills personnel department. He's the co-director, a guy by the name of Malik Boyd. He was in town visiting before camp started. He's a really, really dear friend of mine. And I have a plaque on my wall where I was on the 1985 all-rookie team. And he said, man, you was all-rookie. He said, and he was a free agent. I said, hey, listen, don't ever make that mistake again. I was drafted, man. It was only 10 people picked after me, but I still was drafted.
And like you said,
like a badge of honor.
There you go. Like I said, and I didn't mean it to sound like, well, you waited until the 12th round. I apologize if it sounded like that, but
It didn't.
But like I said, back then, because folks, back then there were 12 rounds, okay, and it's like that's what they scooped up everybody. So it wasn't as much of a free pickings for if you weren't drafted to where you're going. It was nice that the guy had $10,000 that was laying it on your bed, but with Tex Schramm telling you, that you're talking about a kid out of Michigan State. No, he got drafted by the Cardinals, and they probably were trying to get him out of the room because he didn't want to have any tampering charges.
That could be true.
Yeah, because all that thing back then. But no, and again, congratulations on that. You go to the Cardinals, and so give a synopsis of who are your teammates back there in Arizona. I mean, and again, I apologize. I know it wasn't Jim Hart. I know he was already gone by then. Okay, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I know that Jim Hart was not there. Was Neil Lomax your quarterback, or am I misremembering that?
No, you're right at it.
Okay, there you go. Neil Lomax, and he was a decent quarterback. And you're the rest of your team there. I'd love to hear about it.
Well, when I got to the Cardinals, they didn't draft that year they didn't draft another defensive back. So I felt pretty good about that. You know, all I got to do is beat out the guys that's here. Maybe they signed a couple free agents. And so when I got to the Cardinals, they never were on TV because they rarely made the playoffs. So, you know, the league always tries to put playoff teams on prime time.
Yep.
So, you know, when I got to the Cardinals, I knew O.J. Anderson was there, who I have a great deal of respect for. I think he may get a buck or a gold jacket before it's all said and done.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so.
Yeah, and Roy Green was there. Stump Mitchell, Al Butler Baker was a good pass rusher. Curtis Greer was a first-round pick out of Michigan. He was a really good pass rusher as well. We had a guy by the name of Leonard Smith that I played side by side with, who was drafted out of McNeese State in the '83 draft, number 17th pick. He was a complete animal. He was a beast, very, very talented man. So we had some good talent on the team, and I really liked playing for Jim Hannafin. And he was smoking cigarettes on the sideline and stuff, man. It was unbelievable. And so those were some of the people that were on our team: Stump Mitchell, Roy Green, O.J. Anderson, a lot of pretty talented guys that actually, when they went on to other teams, they did pretty good.
Now, were you guys still playing in the East at that time, or had they did the redistribution of the divisions?
Good question. We were in the East when we were in St. Louis. We were in the NFC East, which was, we played the Philadelphia Eagles twice a year, Washington Redskins, Dallas Cowboys, and what was pretty amazing at that point in the '80s, a lot of the Super Bowl champions were coming out of the East. The
right.
Giants, the Redskins. Philadelphia was on the cusp with Reggie White, Jerome Brown, Seth Joyner, Randall Cunningham, Mike Quick. They had the tight end Keith Jackson.
Oh yeah.
The NFC East was loaded at the time.
Yeah. So and that's why I asked, because if you're playing Dallas, if you're playing the Eagles, and I'm from Philly as a kid, that's why I pronounce it correctly. It's the Eagles. I let folks know that. But if you're playing the Giants and the Eagles and the Cowboys and the Skins, and and you're the fifth team in that division, I mean, it's kind of hard to make ends meet, and that's why when they left St. Louis, even to go out to Arizona, it was unfortunately the Cardinals have been an afterthought for a while, and it didn't until they started getting the team to get better out in Arizona that that's when they started to start having their own, I want to say, their own sphere of influence, where you weren't just another team. And so again, I know it would be hard playing. In fact, how did the people in Arizona come out for the games originally? Because again, you were still pretty new back then, if I'm not mistaken, playing for the Cardinals out in Arizona.
When we moved to Arizona, my rookie year was '85. Our first year in Arizona, I believe, I want to say, was '88.
Okay.
And so when we first arrived in the Phoenix, I often wondered who would do that to us. It was so hot. And there were a lot of people who we really sold out when the Cowboys came to town, or the Chicago Bears. For so many people in Phoenix, in Arizona, came from other states. And so they really didn't have a true following. It just had to be built over time. But, we liked when we played the Cowboys or the Bears or somebody like that, because people would come out and we finally get a packed house. But it was a little bit of a struggle initially. And then Gene Stallings did a fine job with us. But when they drafted Kelly Stouffer and missed on Jerome Brown, they didn't take Jerome Brown. There was just some bad blood between the coaching staff and the front office. And so it took a while for things got turned around. But I think when Dennis Green became head coach for the Cardinals, things started to turn around. In fact, I know the general manager, Steve Kine, because I worked in the front office with the Cardinals prior to going to Baltimore. But Dennis Green revamped that entire process, the way they set their draft board, how they went about selecting players, and Steve Kine uses that format to this day.
Yeah, and he's drafted successfully out there. I mean, the run that they had to the Super Bowl, and I know the name, so it's like I know that he's very well respected in those circles. Obviously, Dennis Green, we love Dennis Green because Dennis Green was so close to Mr. Davis, and that there were various times that when we were without a coach, we were like, dude, get Dennis Green. And Dennis Green would have been a fantastic coach for the Raiders. And obviously, may he rest in peace. Great gentleman that he is. And I always think of the fire. If you don't know Dennis Green, then you need to go do the YouTube about, well, crown their asses, and all that other.
I was there.
Oh, you were there? Oh, tell me about that then, please, sir.
I just couldn't believe it when it happened. He was heated up. And it just kind of reminded me of Allen Iverson saying practice. When we talk about practice, when he said, just crown them. Me and Steve Kime and some of the other coaches on the staff, we looked at each other and go, that's gonna make every channel. It's like when Herman Edwards says, "You play to win the game."
Right. There are sound bites that will live forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I do playoffs.
That's a great one.
We can't. We diddly poo, and you're talking playoffs. And Jim Mora will live forever because of that. Obviously. Like you said, Dennis Green will, AI with we talking about practice, not a game, practice. And that's that's wonderful. Oh, I didn't even know that, so I'm glad I gave you the lead in for that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And again, folks, if you are wondering, we are talking with the great safety for the Cardinals, the Jets, the Chargers, and then another stint back in New York, Lonnie Young. Lonnie, before we go into New York, I want to ask you as well, because and I didn't realize that you actually had a chance to play in St. Louis and in Phoenix. Obviously, a large dichotomy of the crowd there. How did the people in St. Louis take it when it's Mr. Bidwell, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, when Mr. Bidwell took the franchise out of St. Louis to take you to Phoenix. And by the way, folks, in case you were wondering, the Cardinals started in Chicago. So they've been to 3 cities as well. They were the Chicago Cardinals. Then they went to St. Louis, and then they went to Arizona. They were the Phoenix Cardinals, and then and obviously we know them as the Arizona Cardinals today. So the Raiders are not the only team that have played for 3 cities. So I don't want to hear anything about, well, you guys can't figure out a team. Cardinals as well. But your talkings are how was Mr. Bidwell with the team? If you're allowed to say, I don't want to get you in trouble.
Well, my mother always told me, said, well, Lonnie, it may be a better, instead of calling somebody cheap, maybe you should just use the term conservative. And so with that in mind, I would say Mr. B was relatively conservative. And so, there were times when you need a pair of gloves or some socks or shoes. We get our checks, man, and it would be socks, shoes, gloves deducted from your paycheck. When you go to the New York Jets or the Chargers, Giants, whoever it may be, you really start to feel like, I'm really in the pros now, so they're not charging me for stuff that everybody else has been getting for free.
Wow.
So Mr. B, and they're family owned, and a lot of the other owners have made their money in other industries. Steve Rashadi made his money in the staffing industry, part of some of it. Some people made their money in oil, but the Cardinal organization, I think they bought the Cardinals for $5,000 from a guy, and but that's that's their bread and butter. Where other owners have, like Mr. Jerry Jones has done well in a lot of other areas, and so for the Cardinals, this was really their main source of industry.
So so Mr. Bidwell was just like Mr. Davis in the fact that was his baby. Okay. So yeah. I do understand that, but still, when you talk about the differences between and again, I'm allowed to say it because I never worked for Mr. Bidwell. So you're not going to get in trouble for having me elicit these thoughts. Is the difference was that Mr. Bidwell's bottom line was in the ledgers, and Mr. Davis's bottom line was how many trophies are in my foyer, and therein lies the difference. So yeah, and that's unfortunate. That's why I said we would have loved to have you come in and be a defensive back with us, but we didn't get you. But after your career with the Cardinals, you went to, and granted, now you're starting to see some of the differences of a quote unquote real franchise. And I use the quotes because we go off to the fantastic lights in New York. And I'm okay. Now, again, I'm probably going to screw up which quarterback was it because I'm old. I know who the quarterbacks were, but I don't know from which era. So I'm guessing Ken O'Brien.
Yeah, Ken O'Brien. I like Ken. I like OB. I thought he was a solid quarterback. Of course, he was part of that great, I want to say it's the 83 class of quarterbacks with Elway, Marino, and all those guys.
Yep.
Ken O'Brien, Todd Blackledge, and I think they have a great deal of Hall of Famers to come out of that draft.
Actually, Tony Eason was in that class too.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
I am not a fan.
Yeah, well, obviously, but from first impressions, Tony Eason is like a swear word to you, I'm sure. Okay. But that's okay. You know what? I know for a fact that Tony Eason. Well, okay, I shouldn't say this. I would put dollars to donuts that Tony Eason doesn't have a Super Bowl ring and you do.
Yeah, I agree. I'll take that every time.
There you go. Okay, so I kind of smoothed the waters for you, sir, as well. Okay, so you go to New York, and obviously Gene Stallings, who was a fantastic coach, and I'm trying to think, was that before or after he was at Alabama?
When I was traded to the New York Jets, I somewhat forced the great Larry Wilson's hand, because we had a coaching change. Once Gene Stallings resigned, they hired the defensive coordinator from the Packers, Fritz Shermer.
Okay.
And Fritz Shermer, I was a cornerback all through my college years at Michigan State, and I learned to play corner. That actually helped me to play in the National Football League for 12 years, because I went from covering Anthony Carter, Al Toon, Tim Brown, Chris Carter, and then I got to the pros. They moved me to safety, and then I went on third down. I would go on the slot and cover Art Monk, Andre Reed, people like that. But the fact that I had played corner and I was raised as a corner gave me added value. And then when they asked me to cover Clint Didier, the tight end or the back, I thought this could never be this easy. Going from covering wide receivers to tight ends and backs, to me, I thought was a stroll in the park. And so when Fritz Shermer arrived in Arizona, he wanted to move me to corner, because I played quite a bit of corner when we had people who didn't perform at the highest level. Oftentimes I'd have to pop out to corner. But at this point, I was in year 6 or 7, and I really wasn't interested in making the adjustment to cornerback unless we were going to make the necessary adjustments to the verbiage in the contract. Because I'm first or second or third leading the team in tackles. When I go corner, I'm not going to hit those incentives. So
Right.
if we make it right, then absolutely, let's do the stuff that we have to do to make it right. So I'll make the transition. Well, they weren't sure that they were going to do that full time. And at the time, then I said, well, I can't find a deal until we come to some kind of agreement on what we're trying to do going forward. And then Emmett Thomas, the great Emmett Thomas, called Roy Green and said, the Cardinals are shopping you and Lonnie just to see. You had you on this recall waiver wire, and they wanted to try to find out what your trade value was. And so Emmett Thomas leaked that to me and myself and Roy Green. And when Roy gave me that information, I found out I had 8, 9 teams trying to trade for me, and several of them were contenders. I thought, oh man, this is my chance to maybe get in the playoffs and make a run and play in some big games like a lot of my friends were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Carl Banks could have very well been the MVP of the Super Bowl game they played against the Denver Broncos. He had a fabulous game, and I think Phil Simms won that MVP. And so I wanted to be like my counterparts and play in the big games and things of that nature. So Eric Whitmark lived around the corner from me, and so I knew he would go past my house every day for work. So I put a sale sign in my front yard just to help him realize I wasn't coming back. Off to New York I went.
Okay, well, good for you. I mean, it's kind of like you wanted to make sure you went to a team that wasn't docking your pay for your cleats and your socks. I can understand that. Kind of like in the movie, what was it? The one about the Oakland A's, and the guy's like saying, "What the hell is this? You got to pay 50 cents for a Coke," I'm like, no, that should be part. And the guy says, "Welcome to Oakland, buddy." Hey, but that's the A's. That's the A's. That's not the Raiders. In Oakland with the Raiders, the Cokes would have been part of the deal. I'm just letting you know that was not with the Raiders, but we'll get what we missed on you. And so you go to New York. You got Ken O'Brien. Your coach is out in New York, and like you said, you played against Al Toon. I mean, Al Toon was probably one of the premier receivers of that era in the AFC. I know that he was a perennial Pro Bowler, and I also was reading now, and I don't want to get this wrong. Were you peers with Eric McMillan, or you were brought in because Eric McMillan had the injury?
No, when I came to the Jets, when I was traded to the Jets, I'm doing my due diligence and seeing who on this roster, who's playing a position that I'm going to have to compete with. And at the time, when I saw, don't the Jets have Eric McMillan, who we call EMAC? And he in 4 years, I think he might have been to 2 Pro Bowls. I mean, he was a real ball hawk. He was more of a ball hawk than he was a violent physical tackler. He was probably more of a finesse tackler than he was a strike you tackler that was going to try to put people to sleep, force fumbles. Eric McMillan was he had a skill set similar to Ed Reed, where Ed Reed was not a smack you in the face tackler. He was a get you down tackler, but he was an absolute ball hawk. I want to say within 4 years, Eric McMillan had 22 interceptions.
Yeah.
He went to 2 Pro Bowls, and I was like, well, I got to compete against this guy. But from where I grew up at, I never was afraid of competition. It's just part of the business. That's what you deal with at this level, And so Pete Carroll, when I got to the Jets, Pete Carroll said, take a look at this tape, come back, talk to me, and, we want to try to have a little bit more physical defense. And I had a little bit of a reputation for being a little bit of a hitter and a striker. And so he thought that for the scheme they were using at this point, my skill set might be a better fit for that defense.
Now,
but I had a lot of respect for Eric. He really was a good player.
Okay, so now I would and again, forgive me for being and now I know football, and I do know that there is a difference between playing a free safety and a strong safety. What did they have? They had you coming in playing strong safety then?
they had me coming in and playing free safety.
Oh,
We
okay.
had Brian Washington. Brian Washington was a good player for the Jets. They acquired him from the great Dick Steinberg, who I really had a lot of respect for. Him and Ron Wolf were with the Jets. They were the two that traded for me for the Cardinals, and Ron Wolf went on to have a great career.
Oh,
But
we
had a guy
love
by the
Ron
name of
Wolf.
Brian Washington.
Yeah, we love Ron
Yeah.
Wolf. Great, and that's why he's in the
he
Hall
was
of
their
Fame.
guy.
Yeah, he was Al's guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame as a he's in the Hall, and he's a Raider as well, folks. So in case you were wondering, Ron Wolf, the great scout
That
and
man.
GM, yeah. But no, I apologize. So you're with Washington now. So was Emac kind of relegated to be like a nickel safety, or what was going on there? If you're on the opposite side with Wash.
Brian.
Yeah.
Eric actually became like the nickel guy, and really, he became a pretty good special teams player for us, along with being a good nickel. I'm telling you, if you throw that ball by Eric, it's going the other way. It's a high probability. He just was one of those guys that had a knack for getting his hands on the football. And so oftentimes he would keep the play. And if it didn't go the way he wanted it to go, it was either feast or famine. But that's what ball hawks and playmakers do. They are risk takers, and those are the guys that end up making the difference. They can be the GOAT, but they expect to be the hero, and that's why they take those risks.
Okay. Now you go over to the AFC East. Or as I actually like to call it, the AFC least, or the NFC least nowadays with the teams, because it used to be the Pats and the other three guys, but and as a Jet, and actually we had a gentleman on that was he was a Jets fan. I do his shows on Wednesday with the Wild Wild West, so it's like 4 AFC West guys, and we had a Jets aficionado come in. And Lonnie, am I old? But I'm singing him West Side Story, When You're a Jet, and he's looking at me like, "What are you smoking?" Okay, and I'm like, "Dude, next time you better learn the words, because if I'm doing Broadway show tunes and you don't even know your song, then we'll go beyond that." Anyway, so you're in the East now. I'm thinking back then, obviously, the Dolphins are always a premier team, the Bills as well. And again, you're relegated to what are the Jets going to do?
Right. When I got to the Jets, we actually had the same record that the Cardinals had the previous year. But the Jets had a little more talent at the time. And they really felt like, although they wasn't a playoff team, they felt like they were on the cusp. My agent at the time, Alan Herman, was really excited about the idea of me coming to the Jets. He was a Long Island guy and lived on the island. And so at the time, the Weed Eubank facility was on Long Island. And so he was pretty excited with the fact that I was going to become a Jet and I'd be able to see him more. But my first year with Bruce Coslett, it was just a fun year. We were a good team in a tough conference. We were playing the Buffalo Bills, went to maybe 3-4 Super Bowls, while I was with the Jets. And, we had to play against Dan Marino and the Duper brothers, the Mark brothers, I should say.
Yep. Mark Duper and Mark Clayton. Yep. And
Clayton,
whoa, that's a handful right there.
Yeah. And Marino and those guys. And so we had our work cut out. The coach really was, at that time, they were struggling. And then there was us. And that year, my first year with the Jets, we had to go into Miami, the last game of the season. All the playoff positions were taken. It was one game left to play. We had to go on the road into Miami to play Dan Marino and the Dolphins. Win or go home, lose, go to playoff. That was such a fun game to play in Miami. And we won in overtime. Freeman McNeil, Rob Moore, Al Toon, Ken O'Brien. It was a fun game to play in, and it went into overtime. We ended up winning on a field goal kick from a kicker that we had just signed a week ago, Raul Alegre from the Giants, that let him go, and he had been kicking. And he was our kicker and won the game for us. And so we went into the playoffs and had to go to Houston to take on Warren Moon and the Houston Oilers.
And I'm thinking that didn't turn out very well.
Yeah, we lost that game. We bought some scoring opportunities in the red zone. We threw an interception inside the 10. We fumbled inside the 20, which took points off the board. And then we lost the game by 3 points. The game we really could have won. It just didn't go our way.
Okay. Well, because again, I know the Jets had a solid team, and at least you're finally in the playoffs. And I'm sure, what was the feeling like knowing that you would be going to the playoffs for the first time?
When we beat Miami in Miami, me and Eric McMillan was rolling on the field, just rolling around, and our whole team, we were just so excited. It's hard to go on the road and win under those circumstances, and it's really like a band of brothers, us against the world when you go on the road to play in those big games. And it doesn't matter how many fans in that stadium, we want to get them quiet. And we was able to get that to jump out to an early lead, and we scored late in the game. And once we scored, all of us on defense looked up at that scoreboard and went, "It's 1 minute and 47 seconds to go. Dan Marino, that's too much time."
Yeah.
He put that team right down the field and threw a touchdown to take them in overtime.
I take now. I'm thinking, was Klecko and the other guy, I can't remember who. Was that part of the New York Sack Exchange year?
I missed the New York Sack Exchange year, but you appreciate what I'm going to tell you.
Yes, sir.
I was our defensive lineman. We had got in Marvin Washington, was a big man, good player, and then we had the Dennis Bird was just an unbelievable human being. Rest his soul, and Jeff Lockman. But Dennis Bird, I think I was the first recipient of the New York Jets Dennis Bird Award for inspiration. But Dennis Bird was just an unbelievable human being and a really good football player, faith-based man, a beautiful wife and family. And when he got paralyzed in our game against Kansas City, we had 3/4 of football left to play, and he was paralyzed. And I went in the huddle and told everybody, "Huddle up. Listen, we can't do anything about that. If you don't play this game, the rest of the game was meant to be played, you might be next. And you have to play that game full speed all the time, or you find yourself in a bad place."
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and as soon as you said the name, I said, I know who that person is. Yeah, and I know there was also Dennis Bird. I know was one of the gentlemen that had the paralysis on the field. Now, I know that there was also a Lion who had that.
Yeah.
And it was
Mike Utley.
There you go, Mike Utley. And again, when you are there and seeing something that is so harsh to see, because it makes you feel, like you said, how tenuous your life is when something can be taken away just immediately like that. And I'm sure that it was hard, and I'm hoping, and I think that obviously you guys played well the rest of the game for Mr. Bird.
Yeah, it just really put a damper on the whole experience that day. Just the fact that, we don't know the end result at the time. We just knew they had to cut him off and he wasn't moving. And I remember I was covering my guy when the play was over. I was walking back and I saw the pile and I saw these 2 feet. They just never moved. And then he he was down for a long time, and then they bring the ambulance and the stretcher, and then we got the news later on, a couple days later, that he was paralyzed, and they made the movie, I believe it's called Rise and Walk, about Dennis Bird, and unbelievable. But Dennis later rehab to the point where he walked back out on that field, and maybe with a little assistance. But then, I don't know how many years later, he was hit by a drunk driver and killed in a car accident.
That's just a shame. Yeah.
It's just a shame.
Yeah. I'm sorry to be I'm sorry to bring everybody down, but I did ask the question, and I apologize, sir, for wanting to know about these things. Because again, you were there, and it's quite hard when it happens with you. So,
it really wasn't your fault. It just kind of went I just kind of went to that place. But I think it's good for the fan base to hear something like that, just because you don't realize the danger it is that comes with playing that game. It's the reason why before games you see people who've never prayed all week praying before they run out on the field to play. People just doing different things that they don't typically do because they got to try to get themselves transformed into somebody they're not typically who they aren't typically to play at 1 o'clock on Sunday.
yes, sir.
And when the gentleman for the Pittsburgh Steelers got paralyzed, I saw it right away. I told my wife, I go, he in real trouble. And he was a really talented young player too. So, it takes a lot of nerve to go out and play at that level.
Yes, sir. It is hard. We will. I'm not gonna. I know that you left New York, and I'm going, and I know that there was a time that it was harsh for you as well. And I hate to delve on it, but again, your injury in New York was obviously, and I read about the article. It was something important to you because you knew that the injury was something that you took seriously. Because again, seeing Dennis Bird paralyzed, and with your injury itself, tell us a little bit about how it makes a football player feel, knowing that again, 1 second could be the difference between a lifetime.
Well, my injury was probably one of the worst knee injuries that you can sustain as an athlete. I hear people today talk about they had an isolated anterior cruciate ligament injury, an ACL injury, which is very common these days, and they do a super job of repairing it these days. They used to put you in a cast for a month, and then you had to try to break the scar tissue, and in a lot of cases, they had to change the surgery because people weren't coming back from it. It was the kiss of death for any athlete if you had an ACL tear. Well, I tore my ACL, MCL, and PCL. They repaired the PCL with the cadaver, and so I had to be tested for AIDS and things of that nature. Once I got the cadaver and all that kind of stuff in my leg, and it was months and months and months of rehab. And I really wasn't so concerned about my job at the time because I couldn't compete for it. I was rehabbing, but they had to replace me. And Pete Carroll called me and said, Lonnie, you do a lot for us, because I played safety, and I mentioned before that I would, on third down, I would go and cover the slot. Years ago, the inside slot receiver wasn't necessarily a small, quick, sudden guy. He was, a bigger guy that they kind of used inside as a big body receiver. So Art Monk was like people like Art Monk and Andre Reed played in the slot, and some bigger receivers. And so Pete Carroll said that, we're looking at three guys, to come in and play your position, but none of them really do the things that you do. And with Chuck Cecil, Eugene Robinson, and Ronnie Lott. and I was rehabbing, and it went across the ticker on ESPN, the New York Jets signed Ronnie Lott. The Pete had already took me off that they were going to sign him. That's how Ronnie Lott got to the Jets. And the lady that was working with me in rehab, I was on the stationary bike, but I wasn't making a complete rotation because I really wasn't at that point yet. Once they showed Ronnie Lott was going to the Jets, he stepped on that pedal, and all of a sudden my leg went around in a full rotation, and you know, it was really a grind trying to come back from that injury. I considered retiring because I had insurance with Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London deemed that it wasn't a career-ending injury. It would be a choice for me not to return to play the game. I had been paying a hefty premium for years, and I can't remember exactly what the number was, but it was multiple millions of dollars that my policy was for. And Lloyd's of London took me through pure hell and a bunch of different doctors until it was determined that I could not get the settlement money. So I went back to play.
Wow. That is something that I had never heard about before, about especially, I guess, you know, insurance is insurance, whether you are a professional athlete or, you know, just some guy who gets involved in a traffic accident. You know, it's the insurance companies that don't want to pay out. And that's unfortunate. And again, at that time, right. And if I'm not mistaken, you had an ACL, an MCL, and a PCL at the same time.
All at once.
Wow. Okay. So folks, if you think an ACL is bad to come back from, try all three of the ligaments all at the same time trying to come back from. But again, you were saying, seeing that the Jets had signed Ronnie Lott was your motivation to make that wheel spin because you were going to be coming back. And then of course, when Lloyd says we ain't going to pay out, you're like, oh, well, F that. And again, I have to watch my mouth because I'm on Roku.
Right.
That's something that's thought worthy. Now, I do have to ask though as well, what was the impetus behind you going to San Diego?
Well, that's a good question. When I came back from the knee injury, Ronnie Lott, Brian Washington, and myself were the safeties. And I came back. My very first play back from the knee injury, I got an interception.
There you go.
Very first play, I stepped on the field from my knee injury. They brought me back. I practiced with the team for a week to get into football shape, and then they activated me. My very first play on the field, I got an interception. I came back and I played really, really well. So in the off season, we had to negotiate the contract, and at that point, I felt that I could outperform Ronnie. Ronnie was at the end of his career, and he was pretty much maxed out. He's had a great career, was a great player, and was a great teammate. He could no longer run, and I felt like I could still play. And like when I got to the Jets, Pete Carroll told me, say, listen, we didn't bring you here to sit on the bench, so you take 3 snaps, Eric McMillan takes 3 snaps. Whoever makes the most plays through the preseason plays. I won that job in 2 weeks. And I felt the same way about I'm healthy now. When I come back, I'm going to be ready to play, be time for Ronnie to retire. Not afraid of competition. The game is built off competition. I come to play. And that's exactly what I want to do, is compete, and I want to play, whatever that takes. The fun is in playing. And Pete Carroll said, Lonnie, I absolutely love you, but Ronnie brings so much to this team, leadership, he's a Hall of Fame player. He'd be so good for the younger guy on the team. And I said, well, Pete, with that in mind, I can't sell myself short. Why start off a second when the good Lord has given me the ability to be first? And I'm not going to come back to the Jets unless I have a chance to openly compete for a job. I think I've earned that right. I've never been a backup in my career, and I'm not getting ready to start now. I don't care if it's Ronnie Lott, the man on the moon. I want to have a chance, and that's all I'm asking for. He said he couldn't do that, so I left.
Now, was he getting maybe some, shall we say, influence from on high?
He could have. It's Ronnie Lott. What do you expect?
Right.
He's a great player. You can't take anything from the man, but at some point, it's the game passes you by, and it's just time to hang them up, And Pete said, "Hey, look, man, we maybe sign a deal, a 1-year deal with somebody. Ronnie will be done after this year, and you come back." And so Bobby Beathard was trying to trade for me a long time ago before I went to the Jets. Bobby Beathard was with the Redskins and trying to trade for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was now the general manager with the San Diego Chargers. And a gentleman had gotten in trouble after week 1, and they cut him. And I had decided not to go back to the Jets. And so I figured I'd wait it out a little bit. And then Bobby Beathard called me. I flew out to San Diego. And it just had a great time and a great run with the San Diego Chargers and Nathan Deans and all those guys. And it was an unbelievable year that year. Rodney Harrison was a rookie. He was my rookie. I had him going to get me breakfast, wash my car, and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, man, boy, I tell you, if I ever get a chance to see Rodney Harrison, because he is an incredible Raider hater, I would say, hey, Lonnie Young tells me to go get my breakfast, B word, so, I'll say that. But I mean, the likelihood of me running into Rodney Harrison is kind of slim and none. But if I ever do, I will have that in my arsenal to use against him. So
I got to tell you, he was an unbelievable rookie. Like, they couldn't activate him half the time because he was going to get a personal foul at the wrong time. But it was easy to see that he had everything that you needed to be a great player in this league. And as far as I'm concerned, Rodney maximized his ability. And he was fabulous. And we knew it. We knew it from the beginning that he was going to be a really good player. And Willie Shaw was our secondary coach. His son is the head coach over at Stanford. Been there for a long time. But I have a lot of respect for Rodney, and he did not disappoint.
Well, if that's the Willie Shaw that was our defensive coordinator, then a lot of respect for Willie Shaw.
I'm not real sure. That's the only Willie Shaw I know. So he probably was your guy.
Yeah, because the last real good defensive coordinator that we had until hopefully our present one was Willie Shaw, and he was our coordinator when the Raiders were going up and coming with Gruden 1.0, and he was like the DC out for the tuck rule game and things along. But yeah, Willie Shaw was the best DC we've had in like forever. And so yeah, if he is Shaw's dad, that obviously makes sense.
Yeah.
And the fact that that his son's out at Stanford, and his son is an excellent coach as well.
Yeah, he's done a nice job over there.
Yeah. But so we're gonna go with the, and I'm not gonna throw up in my mouth talking about the Chargers, because that's kind of like a bad word around here. I actually on Wednesdays, if you ever catch the Wednesday show, Coach Defense, who is the Chargers guy on the Wild Wild West show, him and I go at it all the time, but we have fun doing it. But they were talking about the Charger fans. I said, okay, let me see, that's 7. Oh, that's 7. So you almost have 10 now, Coach. That because again, and I lived in San Diego. In fact, the first Raider game I ever chanced to go attend was at Jack Murphy. That tells you how old I am. It was actually Jack Murphy at the time. And watching the Raiders play and beat the Chargers each year. But that was a very magical year for the Chargers under Bobby Ross, if I'm not mistaken, was your head coach. And, and that, I mean, I remember the Chargers being in that Super Bowl because I was still stationed out there at the time. I'm sorry there, Lonnie, but I can't stand that song. San Diego Charger Fever or whatever, Supercharger. I mean, it just, and they played it on the radio all the time. And when you're a Raider fan and all you listen to is that song, I'm sorry. No offense meant. I just can't stand it. The song sucks anyway. But then when you have to listen to it all the time, you understand why it grates on my nerves. But
it's not a great song.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. Thank you. At least I appreciate the fact that we have a rapport together on that song. But again, at the San Diego at the time when the Chargers to finally go to the Super Bowl, and I'm trying to think. I think you beat Harbaugh in Indianapolis to go, correct?
No, actually, we went to Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
And played the Steelers, and I think they were heavy favorites. Nobody saw the Chargers having the year they had. You're absolutely right. It was Cinderella season,
right?
And, we just kept winning. Next thing you know, we were 7-1, and then people started becoming more combo, watching more tapes, staying late, doing all this stuff, and games just got bigger and bigger, and we kept winning. And I don't know that we had a great team. It was just our turn. And when we needed a fumble, there it was. We need a punt return. He's gone. It was just one of those years, and it takes some luck to get to the Super Bowl. Okay. Yeah. So it was a great year. It was a fun year. It was a big deal to go to the Steelers stadium and beat them on the road. They were making a music video about going to Super Bowl, and we went in there and got them.
Now, was Cordell the quarterback at the time?
I played with the guy when I went back to the Jets.
Or was it Tom? Was it Tom Zach?
It was not Tom Zach. It wasn't Tom Zach. Dark hair guy, Paul. Not Bubby. He wasn't Bubby Brister. Who was after Bubby?
Yeah. A forgettable quarterback. Because between Bubby,
apparently.
Yeah, between Bubby and Roethlisberger, there's forgettable quarterbacks. So I'm sorry.
There he is. Yeah. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on. I'm sorry. The trivia here. But you beat the Steelers, and again said correctly. You beat the Steelers in Three Was it still Three Rivers, or had they moved to I think it was Three Rivers still then.
Three Rivers.
There you go. And by the way, what was the worst stadium? And I think I know the answer to this, and this is off the subject. What was the worst stadium you ever had to play in?
Philly.
Thank you. I knew that was the answer, and that's why I keyed it up like that, because I know what the vet was like. I used to live there as a kid, and for baseball, it's fine because it's the cement fields of Philly. When it's, the Phillies playing, I don't know if you can see the Larry Boa jersey behind my back, but yeah, it's fine for baseball, but football, you are playing in cement. You had those ridges in the lines. It sucked. And there's no wonder that there were so many people getting injured playing on that crap. Well, I'm glad that now that wasn't, I hate saying, that wasn't what took you out, was it? You said it was in Buffalo, right?
We were in Buffalo in like the end of November, 1st of December, cold, wet, rainy, snowy kind of thing, Buffalo.
Okay. Oh, by the way, Mike Sarah says it was Tommy Maddox. Does that ring a bell?
It does ring a bell.
Okay.
It does ring a bell.
That's why I have my what is it? My information crew. If I don't know it, they'll make sure I get it in the comments. So this is interactive, theater here. But you go to the Super Bowl, and I hate saying it, I had a chance I was actually off the coast of San Diego during the time that the Super Bowl was played because I was stationed out there at the time. Where I'm in the Navy, we're doing donuts off of Southern California around Catalina Island, and we finally get reception for the Super Bowl, and I missed like the first quarter because we didn't get it right as soon as it came in. And I know that and I apologize for being, I know it was the culmination up until a time later on that we will get into after this, but it was the culmination of your football career. You finally go to a Super Bowl, but you run into Jerry Rice, Steve Young, and the rest of the crew.
It was, it was such a good year for us. It was such a big win, and the celebration coming back from Pittsburgh, the streets of San Diego was filled with people. We couldn't even get in Jack Murphy Stadium. They had a whole ceremony when we returned. It was just bananas. And we just ran into a buzzsaw. The San Francisco 49ers were a great team, and it was just their time. We probably had maybe overachieved a little bit, but I also didn't feel like we had a good game plan going into the contest. Willie Shaw, Bill Onsberger was the defense coordinator. There was rumors that he was going to retire after the Super Bowl, and Willie Shaw was going to just move right into the defensive coordinator's role. And so during the week of the Super Bowl, those two just bumped heads on everything that we were going to try to do against San Francisco. And at one point in the meeting, Jerry Rice was going to end up in a slot on a particular formation, and we were going to leave him uncovered. Having played 10 years of pro football at that point, I simply posed a question. Why would we do that? The most dangerous player in the National Football League, we were going to give him a free release and not pinpoint it. Willie Shaw said, and when they're in this formation, this part of the field, this hash mark, they get in this formation, ball goes backside, they never look at this guy. Okay? Well, they made the adjustment, ran right down the center of the field, unabated, and touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. I think you said you missed some of the first quarter, but the game was over by the end of the first quarter.
And I didn't want to say that, but when the TV came on, and I think it was like 21 to something, and it was like 21 points in the first quarter, and then when the TV comes on, the Niners are driving again. And again, I don't take glee in this against you personally. So please, I take glee as a Raider fan that had to listen to all of these Charger fans in San Diego at the time when I'm stationed there. I knew that when we pulled back into port, I would be able, in the immortal words of Eddie Murphy, giggle my goony goo goo ass off at the crowd, right? So again, it's not personal. Because again, I know that it was a devastating loss for you, and I felt that obviously when the Raiders went up. Because again, I live in Tampa, so up until a few years ago, I had to listen to about what I had to give the Chargers. This was karma coming back at me, living in Tampa, here for that. But again, it was a great year. Stan Humphries, Natrone Means. Yeah. And all of the rest of the defense it was a fantastic defense. And it's surprising that Bill Arnsparger, who is the architect of the Killer Bee defense out in Miami, couldn't get along with Willie Shaw in that respect. Yeah, that's kind of like the same crap that we had with the when Barrett Robbins unfortunately takes a hiatus before the Super Bowl. And Bill Callahan decides that they're not going to change any of the calls. that was stupid too. So now I understand that there can be stupid things done before a Super Bowl, and then you see what the outcome is.
Pressure busts pipe, and in some cases, the stage is too big for people, which would be surprising for a guy like Bill Arnsberger and a guy that was such an up-and-coming, talented coach in Willie Shaw. But they couldn't get on the same page, and the end result was what it turned out to be. And the game was over so early that it wasn't quite as painful. It wasn't a last-second field goal. It was a blowout. And so, it was great to get there. It was a great experience. I got an AFC championship ring out of it, and back to the Jets I went. It was such a fun year to just, as soon as you win the championship game, your phone just blows up, and then you start getting all these emails from the team about tickets and all the stuff that has to be done. It's such an unbelievable experience. The NFL Super Bowl, it is one of a kind event. It's just an amazing, amazing experience. I had two of them.
And we'll get to that as well, because you basically gave me the segue. You went from San Diego, you go back to New York, because I think that Ronnie did retire at that time, and it was prophetic that they wanted you to come back and play safety for them, because they knew what they had with you. You go back to New York, and you played one or two more years?
I go back to New York I played 2 more years. So I played 3 years after the knee injury, which I never really was a full-time starter after the knee injury. It was such a bad injury. I was just so fortunate and thankful to go back and to get back. And I was really appreciative. The good Lord allowed me a chance to continue my playing career. And by the time year 12 came around, I was ready. And I was off into the next part of my journey I was in training with McDonald's to become an owner-operator. And I felt pretty good about that transitioning. And so it was just great. It was a great experience.
You hit my talking point, because I was going to talk about that. You end your career, and again, I actually do my homework too. You get into the management program at McDonald's, but it's like it's stated that wasn't your real cup of tea. And I'm gonna give you the great softballs from here on out. We're gonna talk about your organization in Phoenix as well. But prior to that, okay, I want to talk about, obviously, you being a scout and working alongside Ozzie Newsome. But you said something which I didn't know, was that you actually went and was working out in Phoenix for Mr. Keim prior to that.
Yeah, well, I was working with Rod Graves was the general manager at the time. And Steve Keim was, I want to say, national scout. And he kind of served the role as kind of a college director, national scout. It was just a matter of time before he continued to move up the ranks. And it was a really good experience. I started as a combine scout with what they call NFS, the National Football Scouting Association, which is part of the NFL Combine. And I worked with a guy by the name of Duke Bass. And that's where I got my teeth cut on scouting. And it was one of the best decisions and best experiences I've ever had. I took the job at the time, and it paid $47,500, but I really wasn't in a money crunch. It was just a matter of getting an opportunity to learn how to do the job, and then just kind of building my career from there. And so I got my foot in the door, went through that process, and as a combine scout, you're the first grade that goes on to a player. And then the rest of the scouts that fall will have to travel to all the schools that have draftable grades on a player, and some free agent grades. One of the guys that I scouted, 2 guys I scouted my first year of scouting, I put draftable grades on, was Marcus Colston from Austria, who went on to do a nice job for the New Orleans Saints.
Yep.
and the Harvard quarterback who just retired, Fitzpatrick.
Oh, so you're the reason why we were inundated with Ryan Fitzpatrick for like 20 years or whatever.
Yeah, I put him on the list for everybody in the National Football League to scout. I took so much heat from different scouts that this scout never play, this, that, and the other. And as a combine scout, you work for a team, but you scout for the league. And I said, well, he might not be for the Cleveland Browns, but he'll be a good backup fringe starter for somebody. And I played enough football in my career that I felt like I knew a player when I saw one. And to me, that guy has the intelligence, the competitive nature, and the arm to compete at the next level. And I love watching him through his entire career. And every time I see him, we'd hug and embrace. And I just remember I gave him that run to the leg. I said, just take about 12 minutes, do the best you can on it. I walked out the door, and then he came back right behind me, seemed like, and said, I'm done. Such a smart man.
Well, I was going to say,
his sons is
if he's
an engineer,
right, if he's an Ivy Leaguer, I would expect nothing less. And I've had a chance to talk with Ryan Fitzpatrick when he was playing for the Bucs. He came over to where I worked over at US CENTCOM, and I shook his hand. I said, Mr. Fitzpatrick, I got to let you know, I've heard great things about you, but sir, I can't stand you because every team that you've been on, you've beaten the Raiders. And we never beat Ryan Fitzpatrick when he was playing. Now, somebody checked me on that and said, okay, well, when he was on this team, they beat the Raiders. I said, yeah, but he wasn't playing at the time, because every time Ryan Fitzpatrick played for X team, they won. And it was true. So, and again, very nice guy. And again, for his career, and congratulate, as I was going to ask you about that, what were your big accomplishments as a scout? Well, you already answered my question, Ryan. And Marcus Colston was a great wideout for the Saints, and a very, very unheralded. But remember when he came in the league and everybody was talking like possibly rookie of the year type of material.
Yeah, that was a learning experience, but a very valuable experience. And at the time, I was covering the Northeast, which really doesn't have a lot of talent in the Northeast. Your big schools are Syracuse, Boston College. Dan Orlovsky. I think he's the same class as Ryan Fitzpatrick. Dan Orlovsky was at UConn. Mm-hmm. And so I was making my way up through Connecticut to Massachusetts and all of that kind of stuff. And you got all those, you got Brown. Steve Diophy's son was a long snapper over at Brown. And so I'm hitting all these schools, and you do a lot of work and a lot of travel, and you never really see a player. As soon as somebody flashes something, you got to really temper your enthusiasm, because you've gone so long without really seeing a high-level player. You see a lot of free agents, maybe possible late-round picks in the Northeast, until you go to the few big schools there, the Syracuse, the Boston colleges, and schools like that. So it's one of the tougher areas to scout, because you really have to have a keen eye to get the players right.
Okay, now I'm going to move over to the Ravens, because I want to make sure we get this in at 2 hours. I'd love to stay to talk with you, but I got a 2-hour hard stop with Roku. Your time with the Ravens, working alongside Ozzie Newsome and that staff, and trust me, I had a chance to talk with Brian Billick when he was down in Gitmo, and I said, Brian, if Tony Serafazzo hadn't belly flopped on Rich Gannon, we would have won that Super Bowl. And he's like, yeah, whatever, kid, and he's calling me kid, and I'm old, but he's like, yeah, whatever. I do have a Brian Billick football over there in my collection, and I got it from that time. But honestly, that's a great organization, and you had to work with some, obviously, and with the people that were there, obviously Ozzie in particular. But tell me about your time with the Ravens, sir.
My time with the Ravens was one of the best football experience of my existence. Everything about the organization, top notch. They're one of the highest paying organizations in football as far as personnel goes. They're also one of the few teams in the National Football League that is still in the pension program, which I certainly appreciate these days. Steve Bisciotti, going to cut any corner, any means necessary to win. There have been a lot of good scouts that have gone on to do some really good things in our league, largely due to the system that the Ravens use and Mr. Raven himself, Ozzie Newsome. Well, one of the things that I've taken away from Ozzie during my time spent with him was his ability to listen. It's like a lost art today. With Ozzie's ability to listen, and if you were a first-year scout and a 15-year, 20-year scout scouted the same player, that first-year scout had as big a part in that role as anybody else in that building. And he allowed that voice to be heard. And if that person did not like a player and the rest of the room liked the player, Ozzie listened to that first-year scout, and then he would go, well, maybe we should get some other looks. There's something about this guy that Mark doesn't like. And with that in mind, Mark's done a fine job with us. You know, let's maybe temper our enthusiasm and do some additional work. And that's the kind of stuff that helps limit the number of mistakes he made when it comes to picking players. That's one of the big things I took away from Ozzie. The respect that he had for everybody in the building, his ability to listen and apply the information. John Harbaugh is a coach. I'm not sure if I was the general manager I may ever have hired, because John Harbaugh had never been a coordinator on either side of the ball. He was a special teams coach. But as it turns out, the special teams coach deals with just about every player on the roster outside of the quarterback. So he's a motivator. It's primarily what John does. And most guys that get the big job or the big tier are because they've had success on either side of the ball as a coordinator. But John has the respect of the room, the building, but more than anything, he had respect for Ozzie Newsome. And so anytime that we were hung up on an issue in the draft room, we could defer to the Wizards. And he would just do what he does. And then he'd say, do we want to take the best athlete or the best player? Those are the conversations that you have in the draft room. And it's very competitive in the draft room. Everybody wants the guys that they scouted to be drafted. And then everybody fights for their guys. And there is a lot to the preparation of the draft. That's why I think the college director is one of the toughest jobs in all of football, because you have to project that college skill set to the next level. For example, I wasn't a big Baker Mayfield guy. And I was the minority. But based on my lifetime football experience, that's not a guy I saw at 1 o'clock on Sunday. I saw John Elway, Warren Moon, Dan Marino, Jim Kelly. That's what I associated with playing the quarterback position. And I liked the player. I didn't like him as the first pick in the draft. I gave Baker Mayfield a fringe starter grade, and I took a lot of heat for it. But that was my professional opinion, and I didn't waver on it. And but I also you're going to miss on players in scouting. I missed on, I just had his name, the linebacker, Clay Matthews. I liked Clay Matthews. I didn't like him in the first round. Clay Matthews was a one-year starter at USC and never ran faster than 4.7 until his senior pro day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he might have had 6 sacks his senior year. Prior to that, I don't know that he had any. I thought he was a mega guy. I didn't know that he would turn out to be the player that he turned out to be. So you're going to miss on some players. You try to learn from all those experiences. But Ozzie was amazing to work for. Just a sharp man. And he's got a unique knack for picking talent. I mean, he picked Jonathan Ogden and then turned right around and picked Ray Lewis. They both got gold jackets.
Oh yeah. And because of the positives there, they are both wearing rings, which you wear as well. And I said that when we get you on here next time, I want to see that big gaudy purple ring. And trust me, there are many men here that would love to at least see like I said, I would love to see a quote unquote gaudy, and I'm being facetious when I say gaudy, but a large Ravens ring. And I can't let you leave without at least letting you talk about the organization that you founded in Phoenix and all the positives that go with it. And I like what the lady said. You might not remember me, but you hired me, and now I'm manager at that place. You know, I saw that story, and I wanted to let you talk to your people out here about that organization, sir.
Yeah, I'm the owner of a staffing company called Staff. We're part of a national organization. I'm the franchisee owner for all of the Phoenix metropolitan area, and we're on the front lines of putting Arizona and Phoenix people back to work post-pandemic. And it's one of the most rewarding experiences of my life because we help people get their lives turned around. We also help our clients get reliable applicants and employees, and we take them through a vetting process, and we're constantly putting people out to work and helping. You know, we want to make a match, almost like a dating service. You know, we want to match this elite skill set with the right company, and vice versa. And in this market, it has been very, very tough, but I have a very diligent staff. My wife works with me as well. She's also, she has her PharmD as a pharmacist. She is an absolutely brilliant and beautiful woman. I'm very lucky to have her in my life. I will say I outkicked my coverage. I hope she's listening. I have a chance to get some dinner and maybe a snack.
Yeah, and tell her if she is listening, guaranteed that the old salty graybeard agrees 100%. Definitely outkick the coverage, outkick the stadium on coverage on that one. And you're an awesome man, but to have a wife as talented, as beautiful as she is, working with you is remarkable and fantastic for you both, sir.
Yes, I'm very, very blessed. I thank God every day.
There you go. Well, I want to say, because this is a Raiders show, and before we go, the hardest Raiders you had to cover in your career.
Hardest Raider I had to cover in my career. God, that's a tough one. You know, we didn't play the Raiders a lot when I was with the Cardinals nor the Jets. It might have been Tim Brown. You know, Tim Brown was a good player. He's a Hall of Fame player. You know, I had to play against him when he was at Notre Dame and with the Raiders. I will say this, that I loved playing against Marcus Allen and Bo Jackson. I loved it. I looked forward to it because it was a challenge. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. We were playing the Raiders, and Mike Harden, who used to play with the Denver Broncos, he was with the Raiders at the time, had called me. I was coming off of a broken shoulder. This was my first game back. And my first game back, I played the Raiders, Marcus Allen, and Bo Jackson. And so Mike Harden called me and said, "Hey, Lonnie, I just want to tell you, man, Bo Jackson, he's Bo the real deal, man. Whatever you do, don't hit him high." I said, okay, I got it. About an hour later, I got a phone call from a cornerback that I used to play with the Cardinals, who was traded to the Raiders. His name is Lionel Washington.
Uh-huh.
About an hour later, Lionel Washington called me and said, man, I'm telling you, man, what you don't want to do is you don't want to hit Bo Jackson low. And I'm like, what other options I have left, you know? And so during the game, I was dropping in the flats in the zone coverage, and the quarterback looked downfield, didn't really have anybody, and so he dumped the ball off to Bo Jackson, and he's maybe 5-6 yards in front of me, and so we're in open space, and I'm thinking, well, this might not be good, but I'm going to take my shot. So I go to tackle Bo Jackson, and I'm not kidding you, I don't know where the man went. He jumped over me so fast and disappeared. By the time I missed him and got up and started heading back to the huddle, I looked at the scoreboard and the sign said, unbelievable.
You were bowed. You were bowed.
You know, it's some great talent out there at 1 o'clock on Sunday, man. Win some, you lose some.
Hey, but you know what? I give it to you that you didn't make a business this. You actually went after him, but that Bo's leaping skills got the better of you instead of being trucked.
You know what? I'm glad it happened that way. Less painful.
For sure. And again, Mr. Young, please don't hang up, because when I do my outro, I will talk to you after the show as well. But I want to thank everybody for being here with Safety and Scout, Mr. Lonnie Young. I enjoyed this. Again, I don't just get a red shirt on and get my hair done for everybody, sir. So I wanted to make sure I gave you the respect that it was. Join us here on my program. Thank you for everybody being here. We have fantastic entertainment, information, and interviews here. Be sure to come back anytime. This wasn't a You Don't Know Jack About Sports show. It was a webcast, the Galleon Wheel webcast for me with my guests. Thanks again, Mr. Young. Please don't go anywhere. Ed Winchell says he's going to look you up the next time he's in New York. And Tito says, great show, and thanks to you. Thanks to everybody for being here. Remember, we'll be here for, make sure you see me Sunday. And remember, 1 week away, baby. It's Raiders football. 1 week. In 1 week. I can't wait. But again, thanks everybody for being here. We're going to go on to the outro, and it's always a pleasure. Again, Mr. Young, please don't go, and we'll do the outro. Thanks again, folks. Y'all take care.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, sir.